The Major is certainly one of Hellsing's fan-favorite characters. But what makes such a deranged figure so beloved? Why is he so highly regarded, and why has he so many strong loyal underlings, while he himself is just a short fat man? Join me for a wild ride, where we talk about the Major, starting with his first appearance. I'm not sure if you remember it, but his first appearance was already in volume 2 of the Hellsing manga. The Hellsing Manor was just under attack from Jan and Luke Valentine. The attack itself was unsuccessful, which sends a couple of mysterious men in uniform into a heated discussion. But although it was unsuccessful, the mage ensures them that the experiments can go on. What experiments, you ask? Well, they were never really talked about again, but in the original manga, the vampires Alucard and Ceres dispose of are all infested with freak chips. Chips that allow tracking of vampire movements that can later be analyzed by the receivers. At this point, they are still in the process of improving the creation of artificial vampires to make them even better. To be honest, I think their artificial vampires are already pretty strong. Luke certainly was a pretty strong vampire. Well, not on Alucard level of course, but when the power ceiling ends at Alucard, if you can put up some resistance, you are pretty capable. But back to the Major. We only see a silhouette, and this doesn't change for a couple more appearances, because his next appearance is just a couple days later in the Imperial War Museum of London, where Integra and Maxwell are meeting. After a small incident, they decide to talk further in the cafeteria outside the building, where Maxwell reveals the truth about Millennium. It is an organization of leftover Nazis that fled their country during World War II, and that these are the people that are currently attacking her, which shocks Integra. What is also shocking is that there are two people eavesdropping. The Doctor and the Major just nonchalantly drink tea in London. Why do that? Well, it seems like fun, I guess. Also, the place they're currently at, the Imperial War Museum, is an actual place and holds tons of exhibitions on war, which I guess the Major was just interested in. I looked through the catalog and they have records, letters from soldiers, images, and even old equipment. To be honest, it seems fascinating. Maybe I'll go there eventually. Anyone been there? If yes, was it good? Feel free to write it in the comments. But back to the Major. He doesn't seem to care at all that they are on his tracks. Well, it's rather the opposite. He gets clearly excited about the prospect of another war beginning. Kinda like a child, where its parents are out, and he can watch TV, eat snacks, and drink unlimited amounts of Coke. That's just the kind of man he is. But to further understand what kind of man he is, we have to look into the past, cause he has quite some backstory. As we are used to with Kota Hirano, the Major is a reused character from a manga called Coyote. There he was, well, a Nazi, and his name was Montana Max. Also, he was a complete psychopath. I can't really show much from Coyote, since it's one of those mangas, but here we can see the backstory of the Major. His father was an alcoholic, and his mother a prostitute, where he had to see every one of her business encounters, which seems pretty traumatic for a child. His father died of alcoholism, and his mother simply didn't care, and went on with her job. That enraged the then young Montana Max, who took his mother's revolver and killed her and her client, making it look like the client killed her. When the police came, they believed him, so he got away with it. He then was adopted by the big man himself and became a very successful member of the Nazi force. What an happy end. He also drops the statement that sex is simply not interesting to him. He only cares about conquest and power. Also, we see him here in his already iconic white uniform. It looks weird, but apparently there's a white uniform that was also worn by the man himself. So we now know where Hirano got the inspiration from. It's called summer uniform and wasn't really as oftenly seen, but it makes sense for the Major to wear one. So we now have an idea how the character ticks beyond what we see in Hellsing. It is of course not canon, but I think it clearly inspired the character. But before we go back to the Hellsing main storyline, we still have the unfinished prequel.
Er kommt!
It is 1945, Warsaw, Poland. The war is about to be lost. But the doctor wasn't giving up. If they managed to create fully functional ghouls, they could still turn the war. I know this sounds ridiculous, but the Nazis certainly were interested in things they called wonder weapons. Science, almost magical, that could easily turn the war. There were rumors about death rays, bioweapons, and flying saucers, and much, much more. Turns out German engineering was quite advanced, as lots of German scientists were directly recruited after the war to advance technology. For example, for NASA to advance their space program. Were these people heavy Nazi supporters before? Well, yes. But that didn't seem to matter at all after that. But back to the wonder weapons. These were mostly a propaganda tool, and nothing really worked out in the end. But back to the doctor, we see a car arriving with the protagonist of this video, driven by the captain. Here the doctor is surprised that the Sturmbannführer was arriving so early. Sturmbannführer is his military rank, which was the lowest officer, which is about the equivalent to a major. The major has high hopes for the doctor's experiments. We can't let such a pleasant war end that easily, right? Yeah, he's kinda messed up. They then head on to dinner, where the at this point already chunky major is stuffing his face with all kinds of delicacies, while the doctor informs him that the research on ghouls is still not perfected. They work but only live for 4 hours and then die, which doesn't impress the major. But he also asks the doctor about how he likes her. The doctor is ecstatic. She is perfect. She is everything he needs to perfect his experiments. He asks who she is, but the major doesn't give him a direct answer. She is our heroine. She is our beginning and our end. Once before, sanity and insanity fought over her. They trampled her underfoot. She is just what is left over. A perfect description in my opinion. But to give an answer, she's Mina Harker. I made a video about her backstory, so after this video, watch that one as well. She is quite the important character. But then they get interrupted by Walter, who wasn't too keen on their research. While the doctor is shocked, the major couldn't care less. The food could get cold. Walter makes it clear that he is about to end everything, but the major can't let that happen. He just loves war too much. But instead of reacting to the direct threats from Walter, he rather compliments the food, especially the well-seasoned sauerkraut. Apparently, the doctor prepared the meal himself. The major is certainly impressed by the bonne cuisine. Walter doesn't appreciate being ignored and kicks a knife directly between the major's eyes, to which he doesn't even flinch, because he knows he has the most capable bodyguard. Walter then slices through the German soldiers, which impresses the major, who makes an offer. Why not betray England? They could need someone like him in their ranks. He would certainly want to. We can see a glimpse of hesitation in Walter's eyes before he comes back to his senses and refuses the offer. Well, can't be helped then. The major gives the command to kill him and leaves the stage. They know they're just holding the captain back. Here we see one thing. Although the major is nothing compared to the werewolf or the butler, he is one thing. He is charismatic, eccentric, and full of confidence. He commands with certainty and belief that he is naturally to be followed. This can sway people and works in a similar way how Integra commands Alucard, with the only difference that Integra is young and inexperienced, while the major truly believes in his role in the world. That is a dangerous skill on such a deranged man. I'd love to see the Dawn manga get eventually finished, but we can only hope that it'll happen. Till then, I have to read the originals again, or display them with Manga Guardian. Manga Guardian sponsored this video, and they offer the cleanest manga and bookshelf accessories on the market. Also, with my code Sleepy15, you get 15% off your whole order and support the channel. Thanks Manga Guardian, and back to the video. But here ends the major's part in the Dawn, and the next time we see him is when Alucard and Saras are under attack by Tubal-Cain Alhambra. The major, accompanied by the doctor and the captain, sit in a room full of screens where they can follow the action. They framed Alucard and Saras as terrorists to get a reaction out of them. They want to observe if a monster like Alucard can just kill monsters or is also willing to kill humans. Actually, this is the first time we see Alucard kill normal humans, if you disregard the fart with Anderson or turning Saras. But to answer the question, can Alucard kill humans? Well, I think we know the answer. Here we also get a dialogue in the manga where the doctor asks, "And now, Führer's deputy?" He scolds the doctor not to call him that, cause walls sometimes have ears. So he asks, "And now, Herr Major?" This was excluded in the dub, maybe to tone it down a little. But here we see his real standing. He isn't just a major, but something much bigger. But still he is bored watching Alucard tear through the fodder and commands to send Tubal-Cain Alhambra. Maybe this will spice things up a little. But before Tubal-Cain arrives, Alucard does his best Vlad the Impaler entrance, which certainly makes the major's heart skip a beat. He is ecstatic that finally there's war again, and against such a formidable opponent as Alucard, it can only get better. He who dances between sanity and madness, an unhuman, our comrade the vampire. He certainly is good with words, and also Kota Hirano does a fantastic job displaying body language. You can just feel his excitement. Well, someone who certainly isn't all that excited anymore is Tubal-Cain Alhambra, because he just got torn into pieces by Alucard, who now has access to his memories. The doctor is disappointed in his experiment, because Tubal-Cain didn't win, but the major couldn't be happier. They just learned what a strong foe Alucard really is. He is a true monster and worthy of being the target of this war. He also shows one of his most dangerous skills. He is able to influence capable people to work for him, like the doctor, like the captain, which is probably his most useful skill and is what makes him so dangerous. A fitting quote here would be Hawkeye's. His ability to draw allies to his side is the most dangerous power on the seas, by Dracul Mihawk. See, Dracul? Huh? But of course this skill also works in other directions than Ruffy's. The major then goes into a frenzy, talking about how he is about to create monsters, to arm them, to train them, and to command them, to become the real last battalion.
You will build monsters, turn them into soldiers, organize them, train them, supply them, militarize them, and command them. We are the last battalion. Das letzte Bataillon.
The English VA did a phenomenal job here, but for some reason I always have to think of Cartman. That's just native English speakers trying to make German accents. It sounds always a little over the top. Well, he is pretty over the top. But still, he then gives the command to return to Jaburo, to the men in the opera. They must be furious. The Men in the Opera is a reference to the former Nazi elite, having a fable for opera music, especially Wagner. It was used as a propaganda tool, in which even Hitler was personally involved. He was a huge opera fan, and due to the cult to his person, all of the elite were also drawn into it. So it's the equivalent of golf courts now, where the rich and powerful get together. Or certain islands, but I digress. We then see the Zeppelin taking off, and hear the major sing. Welcome to this crazy time. So, what's he singing here is a reference to Hokuto no Ken, or English Fist of the North Star. The song is the opening Tough Boy by Tomcat. You should listen to that, it's a certified banger. Here we also learn from Kota Hirano that the major is a pretty big otaku. Yeah, that checks out. In the Hellsing Ultimate Volume 4 ending, we see the major as he forces the doctor and the Hauptmann to attend conventions with him and sing karaoke. Well, I guess him being an otaku isn't his worst quality, but we're getting sidetracked. They have what they wanted, and now it's time to regroup. People are waiting for him. He arrives only to be greeted by everyone with a firm salute. He walks in like a celebrity, which is not to the brass's liking. How can this short, fat and insane man command so much authority, while they themselves are slowly succumbing to age, not being able to walk on their own, and basically just exist in the shadow to be forgotten? Why isn't he turning them into immortal vampires, and let them enjoy a life in youth and strength? They are clearly losing control here. The colonel demands answers, but the major doesn't want to answer and replies with a smug face that he's on a top secret mission by the late Führer. Well, that doesn't sit well with the much higher ranking man. That cracks and beats the major with his cane, only to be stopped by a bullet that shatters the walking stick. He then realizes that he has no allies in this room. Maybe a show with a different tone, but there is this great scene in Avatar where Azula is about to be betrayed. She talks about true power, which is the divine right to rule. They don't know which of these two is going to sit on the throne, but she knows it, and he knows it too. In Hellsing, they all know who is in charge. And this doesn't only go for his underlings, but also for people he interacted with. Like this member of the Vatican who supported Millennium in the research and helped them flee after the war was lost. Well, too bad Maxwell found out about that. The Major has a way of swaying people and appeal to their instincts. You never know who might be loyal to him. But this opens one final question. What is this insane man's plan, and why does he need 1,000 vampire soldiers? Well, one simple reason. For the enjoyment of eternal war. But we will get a more detailed answer in... The Major's next appearance is truly hilarious. Schrödinger infiltrates the Round Table's meeting and tries to transmit the Major's message, which not only fails because the transmission is messed up, but then the camera is also wrongly adjusted. Just peak comedy. He then mocks the Round Table and makes his declaration of war public. His enemy is London, Hellsing, Integra, and finally Alucard. He also shows them how to deal with weaklings like the former Brass, by making an example out of them. These guys are not playing nice, and only moments later, they are departing to London. But before that, we get one more insight into the Major's character. When he arrives to his commander chair, he is greeted by a smiling Schrödinger sitting in it, who mocks the Major. He went to London, got his head blown off, and returned to Jaburo before the Major could make it along the hallway to his chair because he is so slow. Maybe the Major should consider a diet. This shocks everyone in the room. How could the Commander-in-Chief be disrespected like that? The Doctor grabs Schrödinger by the neck, just like a cat would do to its kittens, and scolds him for the disrespect. But the Major only laughs to that, and claims that he could never manage to go through a diet. He also tells the Doctor that it is fine. Schrödinger did his job well. Let him have his fun. The Catboy then leans against the Major's chair and enjoys the flight. But this says a lot about his character. He doesn't really care about much, and he is aware enough to read a situation. Schrödinger is 100% loyal. Why not let him have some fun? He knows what people want from him, and has no reason to not give it to them. That's why he has all their loyalty. The next time we see him is when Rip Van Winkle is ripped apart by Alucard, where we see him stopping the Doctor, who wants to end her suffering. The Major replies that she also did her job well, and mustn't be burned. But here we see another side of the Major. He has no issues using his subordinates. I mean, Rip Van Winkle couldn't be informed about her fate, but if she was aware, she is the kinkiest person in this whole anime. Also, she gets a nice goodbye, not sure if she appreciates it. Then the Major starts his iconic I love war speech. This one happened early in the manga, when Rip was still alive and well, but for pacing reasons they probably shifted it a little. He does what he does best, which is to rile up his followers. The man is just a hype machine, and London is just about to be in sight. The Zeppelins are now floating over London, and the Major turns up the hype machine again. He then gives orders to everyone to just rampage as hard as possible, except for Zorin. You be safe and wait for the main troops to arrive, since Saras and Integra are enemies not to be underestimated. Well, if you want to see how that went out, check my Zorin video. But then it's time for the final toast. And then it begins. London is drowning in fire, and Integra is relocating to the Hellsing Manor, but they are stopped by the captain. Walter knows this is an opponent he cannot win against. But suddenly we hear a voice from a Zeppelin. Long time no see, about 55 years. Why do you always interrupt me during dinner? Man's always down for a joke, but here I see a pretty clear reason for his betrayal. The aged Walter knows that there is nothing he can do in this situation. He is powerless against this opponent, and defeat for him could also be considered betrayal, when you are as proud as he is. So, why not take the chance? We then cut away from the scene, but we all know how it ended. We get one more sight into his mind, when Zorin is about to die and Schrödinger arrives in her consciousness to deliver a message from the Major. Basically, he says that Zorin disregarded her orders and she has to be punished. But the punishment this time comes in the form of Ceres Victoria. Not sure if that's better. He isn't fazed at all by her death. The only thing he cares about is his satisfaction. May it come at any price imaginable. But it says something about him. He is one to joke around with, but expects 100% loyalty. But he also has no qualms about giving credit to his opponents. We see that when Maxwell and the Vatican enter the stage. To help? Well, if you call a complete carpet bombing of everyone help, then yes. But this gets a nod of approval from the Major. Not sure if you would want that if you're a man of God, but what do I know? The next time we see him is on top of the Zeppelin, where he's overseeing everything. He acts like a maestro who is directing an ensemble of musicians. This is his war melody, and he commands its tone. The fact that he's about to be killed by an enemy helicopter doesn't even faze him. He is too high to care about anything. Thankfully for him, he's under proper protection by two more than capable men. He also claims that the Angel of Death is worthy of the skull emblem. He certainly loves his new toy. He then ends Volume 7 with one final sentence. All actors have entered the stage. The curtain rises to turn this Walpurgis night into the day. The term Walpurgis night is based on a myth in German folklore that women flying on brooms meet up with the devil to dance. Its origins are not really clear, but in modern Satanism it is still one of the most important holidays, where the victims of pseudoscience and superstitions are remembered. But in this case, Dance with the Devil is a really fitting description for what is happening in London. The Major is the happiest man alive in this moment. But some of his cooperators start to doubt him. They accompanied him to fight against England. But suddenly there's the Vatican, millions of zombies spawned out of nowhere, and pure chaos is everywhere. They are losing troop after troop, and the Major just sits there, eats and laughs. This man is clearly insane and doesn't care about anything. They are just exterminating our troops, and you cry like little girls. At this point, I would probably report to HR, but I guess they don't have that. He then orders everyone to arm themselves. Well, he wanted to, but there are not enough weapons left. Well, doesn't matter. Pipes, sticks, hand grenades, whatever will work. This is going to be fun. Then he starts singing.
Nun lässt Himmel bis zu Vergebrave, so Kampesten, wir alle schon bereit.
The song is called the Horst Wessel-Lied. I can't play it since it's still forbidden to do so, but it was a de facto second hymn at that time, especially when the author was killed in 1930 by a communist support in Germany. That elevated its status even more. However, back to the captain. Why isn't he singing? Isn't he having fun? Well, the man doesn't share his sentiment and snaps. Not everyone here is an SS member. They are the Navy. They wanted to fight England, not whatever this is. This isn't war, this is madness. Well, he doesn't understand, it can't be helped, but traitors have to be dealt with. A mechanical arm activates, hands the Major a gun, and he starts blasting. Only to not even hit a single bullet. He just can't shoot, it can't be helped. But still, defeatists have to be punished. If you come to overthrow someone, be also ready to be overthrown. Also lost control? He never gave this war out of his small hands. Calling them his small hands here is a pretty revealing moment. He knows he himself is not a real physical threat, nor an imposing figure. He is just what he is and still commands an army of monsters, especially those two. A newly vampirized Walter enters the stage. The man who was at Integra's side since her father passed away, now a betrayer and even worse, a Nazi. Will she crack under the enormous weight placed on her? No, she won't. She can't. Traitors must be executed, no exceptions. This invigorates the Major. The little girl truly is a fearsome enemy and worthy of all their respect. They deserve to be the enemies of this war. She shall enter the Zeppelin for the final fight. The Major truly knows how to make a bombastic entrance. Also we see Schrödinger again, welcoming the women, only to be shot again by Integra. The Major spectates the whole spectacle. Walter's body is giving up. Well, he tried his best. It wasn't enough. His men are getting killed by Ceres and Integra. Well, this is just the way they want to go down. They can't just end it themselves. They have to die at the hands of a worthy foe. And if these two shall be the end to their fever dream, then it shall happen. They then meet the captain, a truly terrifying enemy that could have ended them right there. But he chose not to. The Major's up there. Go and find him. It's time for the final act. Walter has lost at this point. Alucard will drink again. And greedy as he is, he wants it all. His master, his underling, and all these lives. This is just enough for this greedy king. But how do you kill such a being? A being so wonderfully strong and immortal, a walking castle. How can a simple human end such a being? This question keeps the Major awake at night. This is why he has to wage war. This war especially. We then get a flashback to a Major at death's door, being executed by Soviet forces. And the world offers him to become a monster himself. Consume blood, dilute your soul and become immortal like Alucard. The option of waging eternal war sounds perfect for him, but he can't. He won't. He will never become a monster. His blood, his soul, everything shall only belong to him. He is a human and will never become such a disgustingly weak creature like Alucard. We then see the doctor coming to his aid before his life fades out. I actually made another video about how to become a monster in Hellsing, where I showed different ways the manga has explained transcending humanity. If this part interests you, you should check it out. But how do you kill a monster like that? Well, to kill someone as greedy as Alucard, you just bet on him to consume the poison disguised as wine. He cannot help himself, he must consume everything. And this is exactly what happens. The Major knows his enemy well. Then Integra enters the room, willing to end this insane man's dream, only to realize he is guarded behind the thick wall of armored glass. But she's just in time to enjoy the spectacle. A spectacle that has happened the last time in 1898. This is a reference to Alucard's death at the hands of Van Helsing. Well, technically not Van Helsing, but Jonathan Harker and Quincy Morris, but that's a topic for another video. We see the Major's trap working. Alucard drinks blood again and absorbs Schrödinger's soul, which dilutes the vampire into nothingness and everything. A state he cannot exist in, and therefore vanishes. This is it. The Major won. He won his war and achieved his goal. And now the man who came to kill is ready to be killed himself. And the person to break down his protective layer just has arrived. To the Major's delight, Ceres takes the 88mm cannon and breaks down the glass wall. The Major is annoyed that the glass wall was made too robust. He didn't come per se to die, but if the situation is right, he certainly was willing to offer his life to a worthy opponent. The bullet shatters the man's body to reveal what he really is. A machine? Certainly not. He is human. He's insisting to be human with his own free will. He is not a disgustingly weak creature like Alucard. He is just himself and perfect the way he is. A truly monstrous human. Then it's time for the final showdown. The two contenders ready their guns and start the duel. Well, the Major is just not a good marksman. One bullet clips Integra, taking her eye. Integra, though, approaches calmly and fires exactly one shot between the eyes. This war ended right there. But still, the Major dies happily. He won the war, landed his first shot ever, and was defeated by a more than worthy enemy. It was a good war, he claims, before he dies. And this ends the Major's story. One thing I would be interested in is whether you think that they were actually Nazis. At least Millennium characters with a speaking role. The Major doesn't really flaunt Nazi ideology. He is an insane warmonger, that's for sure, but seems like he allies with a side that can promise him the most war, and that seems to be the side he's chosen. He was one of the most interesting characters in the series. He was boisterous, eccentric, and always a hype machine. But I can also see why you might not like him. But what's your opinion? I hope you liked the video. I certainly tried to make it entertaining, and with everything it took quite some time. But I guess I'm pretty happy how it turned out. I also learned quite a bit of new editing techniques and story writing. So if you like videos like this, sub to the channel and see you in the next one. Thanks to Manga Guardian for sponsoring the video, and bye.